not the beautiful website, not the exchange they're going to list on. Yeah, it should be, the question should be, is this a good investment?
I see your logic behind the investment decision.
Hey, if there's no fun, you might as well pass on it, right?
An economy which has nothing to do, and you really don't care about if the startup already sells something, which is very important for traditional VCs.
That token economy, those numbers you're looking at, that pie chart, right? It's a representation of everyone involved. So when I hear bubble, I'm like, who are the companies I need to invest in once this thing bursts?
I want this investor on my board.
We need more bubbles. Quote that. We need more bubbles.
Ethereum's layer 2 or the new side chains like Polkadot and others.
In a sense, Ethereum, to be honest, met its limit as we know it today. Copy away, kids. More copies.
Good day to everyone. This is Innmind channel with the best information for startup founders and tech entrepreneurs. And today we are going to talk about DeFi. DeFi space is booming now, and we invited the best guest you could imagine to talk about this field. So I want to introduce you to Etienne Vantkruys. Etienne is the founder and CEO of TRG Capital, which is recognized as one of the top 10, I guess, companies investing in DeFi.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Honored to be on your shows.
While preparing for this interview, I've also sent the website of TRG Capital to a few friends in the industry whom I trust their expertise. And when they've looked at your portfolio, they said, wow, can you introduce me with this guy? Which definitely means that it is something enormously cool what you are doing there. So can you please give some brief introduction to TRG Capital?
Well, I guess any company is kind of like a reflection of the founder or founders. So me, myself, I did a pharmacy in college before I dropped out. And the reason for me dropping out was basically something the professor said. And what he said is that if you're really interested in the funding of the biotech industry, you should definitely look into that market. And that's how I started looking into biotech startups. But what I found was a little bit of an alpha, an edge for myself as a trader in investing in these companies is the mindset of a short seller, which is initially like when you're presented with something, you kind of get this initial like line of thought of something is bullshit until proven otherwise, right? And that's how that journey started of looking at early stage companies in whatever industry, and I was primarily focused and interested in biotech and technology tech startups, and that's how my journey started as an investor, which later fully transitioned into what is now, right? Because I stumbled upon Bitcoin in 12, watching this documentary post financial crisis. But again, being a short seller and skeptical, I was like, what is this, right? It obviously back then, nothing like we know now, right? It's nothing like this full-blown global industry that spun out of that white paper in 2009 that Satoshi put online. Got on a forum, people started talking about it, like, hey, it was a forum with guys where everyone interested in financial theory, the economy, what is banking, what is money, what is finance. People are literally still flabbergasted on what happened post financial crisis 10 years ago. And in that conversation, like I said, discovered also like Bitcoin, what it was, and started looking deeper. It was not until I discovered Ethereum during their ICO through a good friend of mine, where I was like, hey, wait a minute, there's actually more happening, because the narrative Ethereum added to the industry was of the money is composable, programmable, there's innovation happening, right? It's Bitcoin as this P2P payment system. Ethereum took the narrative a step further, like, hey, it's open, global, build stuff on it, right? That building part, that innovation part came with it. And out of that building, obviously, we're talking about now companies being formed, people with ideas. And that's how it's like, hey, wait a minute, you're connecting innovation with capital, right? Because capital is going to find a place where good ideas usually concentrate themselves. And that's Ethereum. That's the whole narrative and the promise of Ethereum. And that's how we started moving and incorporated in Amsterdam, started traveling and building a global network. Been to almost every corner of this planet for crypto conferences, meeting cool partners that I still work today. So it's almost 5 years now doing this full time. And here we are, 2021. The narrative has never been as strong. And the industry, the future is looking promising, and we'd love to be a part of that, this growing industry where, in a sense, finance, even just from not just the usage side of it, digital assets, but also the funding part of it has never been more exciting to be in. I think it's the coolest industry you could be now, in my opinion.
It's difficult to disagree with you, but I really want to understand, in your portfolio of TRG Capital, you have such companies as Polkadot, Kava, which is not Spanish sparkling wine, Kava, yeah.
But it could be the same thing, because both are sparkling. Both are sparkling. Kava
Yeah.
is sparkling also. Yeah.
Now I see your logic behind the investment decision.
Hey, if there's no fun, you might as well pass on it, right? So yeah.
Indeed. Another big brand I know from your portfolio is Ava Labs, which is also quite booming. And I want to ask, how did you manage to create such a sexy, spicy portfolio? What did you rely on during decision making?
I guess it's a process, right? It's a process to investing. And it starts from, like I said previous, it's like starting from being skeptical, going to full-blown talking. I talk to founders all day long, trying to understand their process, trying to understand what they're trying to put to market. So for instance, Kava, I got an introduction to a good friend of mine, Dragos, in Romania. Me and him shared a similar connection and passion for basketball. And he introduced me to Kava, and we had a conversation. And in the first conversations I had, for instance, with the founder, Brian Kerr, was his deep knowledge and understanding of what actually he's doing, right? Not only that, his track record, he has sold his previous 2 startups. So he had a proven track record, like, hey, taking a product to market. He knew what he was doing, in a sense, even though we're in this new nascent industry where crypto is moving so fast. We're literally on this high-speed train, and we're literally forming the track as we go, right? Especially from regulatory perspective, what works with users, even the underlying tech, the security. So, but leading the ship and his understanding of what he was doing caught my ass, like, hey, wait a minute. And then when he said something he said literally was my light bulb moment, is when he said, we're building MakerDAO for Cosmos, and stable coins are gonna like fuel the next wave of this industry. And then I was like, hey, wait a minute. So I talked to my partners, and that's when we decided, like, we're going in anything that we could get. So again, but the funny part about that is that when we invested in Kava, was deep in the bear market, halfway through 2019, where the whole private sale market or the SAFT market was literally almost in a deep coma state, right? So we made that investment, and actually same goes for Avalanche. When we invested in Avalanche was early 2020. No one was investing almost in early stage projects, and but I had met Emir. Come again?
everything was down on the market.
Yeah, everything. It was literally after a Bitcoin crash that which took the whole market with it. So I would say, in a sense, the best investments we made during a bear market, because you get to date several times, right? It's nobody's in a rush, right? You're spinning around every dollar before you spend it. And same goes for Avalanche. So I had a few conversations with Philip. I have met Eamon before at the Paris Blockchain Week, early 19. So imagine a year later, it took a year for us to like, hey, wait a minute, you know what? This thing could really capture market share and take this whole industry, the whole underlying technology to the next level. And that's why it was like, hey, Kava beat on Cosmos, Avalanche doing their own thing. It makes sense and it fits our thesis, the team that's behind it, their execution, their execution prowess. So it was like, hey, this is a good investment, because that's the ultimately the final question, right? Like, is this a good investment, right? Not the marketing, not the beautiful website, not the exchange they're going to list on. Yeah, it should be. The question should be, is this a good investment ultimately? And would we sit on this asset for 10 years, right? Will we have this patience to be with this asset, this team for the next 10 years? And that's how, so when you, it goes back to that patience that Warren Buffett teaches also, right? Like if you're gonna send money, are you willing to hold that for 10 years and let the team execute and the market discover its value for now that asset to appreciate in value, right? So that patience is like, hey, when there's no rush, I feel like Kava, Avalanche, even Polkadot, a couple of other projects in our portfolio, Staffy. I think those projects are generational investments. I think my daughter's going to make that decision whether or not they what they want to do with the Avalanche or Kava, because we're happy with that. So the approach is to be active investors. So we're also running a validator node for Kava, where we're strengthening and adding additional security to the network. So that approach means we're bringing more than just money to a project, right? As we're in this bull market, as you know, money becomes almost the cheapest and almost the dumbest commodity in the room.
Yep.
Right? So teams usually need more than just money, right? Usually what we find is small teams, oftentimes inexperienced in anything related to business, building a business. So if you want to add certain probability, a certain like percentage, like probability that this thing is going to be a success, you have to like add more than just money, right? So it's that cliche strategic value, but certain people really understand, okay, so what is that strategic value that you could bring to a project, to this startup, to this young team? Because literally everyone is experimenting, right? The exchange they're going to list on is an experiment, right? It's a startup. The marketing team, the marketing service they're going to talk to is a startup. Everyone is a startup in this industry, in a sense, right? So we're literally just experimenting as we go, and the overall market capitalization of this industry grows. Everything is literally an experiment. So you have to be hands-on and practical in figuring out, especially with these cycles, how fast they move, or any piece of information could shake the market in whatever direction. We saw the same with Ripple a couple of weeks ago, right? Ripple and the SEC. Literally the price went from $1 to 17 cents, and now it's back to 55. That swing in literally 5 weeks, right? So this market is still, in my opinion, like experimental and therefore slightly fragile, but it's exciting, and it's amazing to be part of it, right? At the same time, right? We're writing history, we're shifting the whole narrative of finance, global finance, as we speak.
Oh my God, as you describe it, I think more and more traditional investors would want also to join this market, I mean, and we see that they are joining. But
Yeah.
what you describe, Etienne, your decision making really looks for me very familiar to the decision making of the top tier VCs from traditional industry. I mean, Sequoia and others, they are also looking at the team, at the long-term perspectives. They are also looking at the execution capabilities, etc. But what is the difference? Because when I listen to the pitches of DeFi startups, they completely differ from the pitches of the startups in so-called traditional sector. So how do you, what are the differences in the approach between VC and TRG Capital as the VC in the DeFi space?
Actually, to be honest, not that much, right? I would say, let's cut it in two pieces. Where is it different in certain areas, and where is it like is there like a giant overlap and similarities between being a VC or venture capitalist, right? Being an investor in general. The part where it's literally the same is you're evaluating a startup, an idea, as Steve Blank would say in all his speeches, a group of people are like concentrated and bonded to an assumption, right? It's a group assumption that a group of people, customers, would need this solution, that thing you're building, right? You're solving this problem and you're trying to take it to market, but it's still an assumption, right? No, you don't know if people are actually going to use this, right? So you're evaluating an idea and the people behind the idea that they can execute and deliver this solution, right? So there's that, from that angle and standpoint, it's literally the same, right? Where it's slightly different is, I would say, like almost crypto specific, is that from an execution standpoint, operational standpoint, technology standpoint, everything is literally still experimental, right? For instance, look at Yearn Finance, right? You're going to put so much money, people have so much money invested and locked on the platform, but still from a security standpoint, we don't know, right? Which is why the platform suffered this exploit a couple of weeks ago, right? So there's a lot of security risk from every angle possible. Operational, like what works, what drives this market, whether it's retail or institutional, what drives this market, what are the indicators of success? Investing in a protocol, what is it? What does that mean? It's global, meaning it spans different regulations, regulatory bodies, countries, nation states. It's global, and it's never seen. We've never seen this before, right? In the history of the whole venture capital game or startup game, we've never seen this before. Literally, you would talk to teams and the founders never met in person, right? You'd be like, hey, the CEO is in Austin, Texas, and the CTO is in India, and the CMO is in Russia, right? It's global, it's different cultures bonding. And so that operational side, trying to weave yourself through this industry, it takes a bit of experience, a network. And now, especially with COVID and people in lockdowns, travel restrictions, you more than ever depend on the value and the value concentration in your network, your direct network, right? You could go to conferences pre-COVID and meet people and have a face-to-face conversation. But right now, you're at home behind a computer. We're on Zoom all day, right? And literally, you're trying to get a human feel, because we're still humans in a sense, right? You're trying to get a human feel of how authentic and genuine someone is before you're like, okay, we're gonna we're going to decide on a particular professional relationship or business relationship. And so that raw experimental side of the industry in what works and what not takes a bit of experience, it's a steep learning curve to understand these tiny details, intricacies of what you meet in the industry, like wallets, exchanges, what's possible, what's not. These little tiny details, definitely it's not a week's course and you're up and running. It definitely takes a bit of time understanding the driving force of Telegram. It takes a bit of, it's a steep learning curve. But again, it's exciting as hell because it's cycles come and go. It's fast, what works and what not. The NFTs entered the conversation, right? So now everyone is like, okay, what's happening here, right? Why is that? So yeah, it's a lot of overlap, but at the same time, it's still crypto specific behaviors, networks you want to understand and learn and connect with before you're like, okay, I can be part of this on a daily basis and potentially make a career out of this.
Yeah, thanks for elaborating. And definitely I understand that during few minutes, it's not possible to explain the full decision making. Yeah. Otherwise, everyone will be the same successful as you. It takes years, and also this gut feeling, which also you are not born with that. You earn it with sweat and tears. But the core difference also lies on this business model part or unit economy, because in traditional startup, you have expenses, you have profits, you have a margin, etc. Yeah. But here in DeFi space, you have this token economy, which has nothing to do, and you really don't care about if the startup already sells something, which is very important for traditional VCs. And you look to the startups who do not sell something, who are not going to sell something, but who have this token economy. So
yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point you bring up. So let me expand on that. The thing, you get a pitch deck and you look at a startup, their token economy, and the first thing you realize, and it took me a while also to realize, is that token economy, those numbers you're looking at, that pie chart, right, it's a representation of everyone involved, right? So from a game theory perspective, where everyone tries to gather as much information to adhere and like fulfill his own promise, to meet his own interest, right? All actors in that economy, that token economic is a representation of that. So we're talking about the founders, the team, new hires, the community, investors, early investors, later investors. So it's everyone's interest is in that document, right? That piece of paper. And you study that and you're like, okay, whose interest does this serve first, right? So again, what you said, it's a good point, right? Like a traditional startup, say you're selling medical instruments to hospitals, industry I'm passionate about. So you're selling medical instruments to hospitals and supplies, medical supplies to hospitals, right? You'd be like, hey, how profitable is this company? What is the turnover? How much are they selling on a quarterly basis, annual basis? What is the net profit? You're asking, watch any Shark Tank or Dragon's Den, and you give those answers. You give those questions, right? Like, give me your numbers. How much did you sell last year? What are you projected going to sell next year, right? So you get those questions. So now you look at crypto and like, wait a minute, technologies are new. So you're essentially investing in a protocol where the usage of that protocol, the token, the utility token, the usage of that protocol is going to drive the value. So the token becomes that instrument that is going to capture the value of that network. So you're buying a piece of that network represented in that token. So that's definitely a different model to get used to. Like, okay, what's happening here? So the more people So there's two drivers now. The more people want to hold this asset, trade it, versus, or not even versus, it's just part of it. People that actually use it from a utility standpoint. So that representation is what we talk about, like the token is going to capture value, and that is ultimately going to drive the value of it as it's being traded, right? And that's definitely a different business model, and we're seeing more academics picking up on it and studying it, like, okay, what drives this, right? How, and definitely a big chunk of it is speculation, right? A big chunk of it is speculation, but which people that want to bet about the industry, like, hey, it's a bubble. But again, if you look at the word bubble in human history, there's been a bubble every year, smaller ones, bigger ones. And the thing I like about the word bubble, when I hear people say bubble, I get excited. Because now bubble basically means that there's a particular piece of innovation happen, and people just flock to it, right? They run to it in big hordes, like, hey, we want to be part of it, right? Because it's a possibility, like, hey, there's enormous wealth going to be created, right? We saw that with the weed stocks, the marijuana stocks a couple of years ago, for instance, right? That was also a tiny bubble, right? But here's the thing with bubbles. The thing I think people just overlook with bubbles. The first question to answer is there actually like real innovation happening that justifies the size of that bubble? That's the first question. The second question, which is the more interesting from a VC standpoint, is once that bubble burst, which potentially we could be like, hey, the bubble burst in 2018, right? Bitcoin went back to 4,000, the bubble burst, right? People use the word bubble as a prerogative term, right? Like it's a bubble, right? It's negative connotation. But you should flip it around and be like, hey, the second question is, what remains after the bubble burst, right? So now, two examples. First, the tulip mania in the 1500s, the tulip mania, and me being a Dutchie, right?
Of course.
The tulip mania, in every academic journal, people are going to, well, people describe bubbles, people bring up the tulip mania. But here's the beauty. The Netherlands exports millions and millions and millions USD of flowers every year still. So did the bubble bursting, the tulip mania bursting, kill the flower industry? No, it actually 100x'd it, right? The Netherlands exporting more flowers and tulips more than ever. It's a full-blown industry. Huge chunks of the country are filled with tulips, right? Second example, the dot-com bubble. Did it kill computer innovation, software innovation? What do we got? Actually, we got out of that Amazon, Facebook, Stripe, PayPal. So much innovation came out of that. So a bubble bursting is not the end of it. It's not the end of it, right? So when I hear bubble, I'm like, who are the companies I need to invest in once this thing bursts, right? Who are the future blue chips? What's the next Amazon that is going to come out of this bubble, right? And that's the question we should be asking ourselves instead of the short-sighted, oh, it's a bubble, forget about it. That's what all the traditional FT economists, reporters were doing, right? They're doing that for 10 years already. Oh, Bitcoin is a bubble. Oh, blockchain is a bubble. The coolest one I've read is blockchain is it's a solution looking for a problem. It's like, oh, wow, that's crafty. But still, right? There's so much innovation happening and there's value being created. And I'd rather be on the side of, if 9 out of 10 people are just going to scream, it's a bubble, I'm going to be that 10% like, what's the opportunity? What's the Amazon that we're going to get out of this, right? And if it's Ocean Protocol or Aave, Avalanche or Kava, I want to be positioned already. right? I want to have a stake in it already, and because they're going to lead the next wave of things. So the whole bubble thing, the whole bubble narrative is a beautiful one, actually.
Well, I really, I should confess, I love your approach, and it sounds very appealing. But
We
especially,
need more bubbles.
yeah,
We need more bubbles. Quote that. We need more bubbles.
we
So
need bubbles. When you said about this example with the when the trade in tulip industry actually boosted the industry of flowers, yeah, the market of flowers. How do you think will this trend in a DeFi industry also boost the traditional banking sector, or it will kill it?
I'm not a big proponent of that language. I read it a lot, especially in US media, like destroy, the Ethereum killer, or to me, it's let's take a step back and be like more practical, right? Any blockchain platform or any solution, whether it's traditional finance or DeFi, CeFi, DeFi, for whom? The question I like to ask myself, for whom? Right? So DeFi is interesting for sure, drives a lot of value, brings a lot of value for retail investors, smaller investors. Why? There's a low barrier to entry, right? If you want to invest in a hedge fund, you probably need a stiff, heavy documentation of you're an accredited investor, which is just silly. Doesn't make any sense, right? You're going to tell groups of people, you're on your own. You can go to the casino. You can go to a casino. You can walk into a casino in Las Vegas with no permits and just dump your baby's diapers money on a blackjack table. Not a problem. But if you want to buy Apple stocks or Shell stocks or whatever, or invest in a startup, now we're going to ask for accreditation, which is kind of doesn't make any sense, right?
Ridiculous.
So now with Web3 technology, you're like, hey, connect your MetaMask and you're in a platform, you can start earning on Compound, right? So it's literally a bit of freedom, okay? So, but again, from an enterprise perspective, I don't see the National Bank of Scotland putting their assets on Ethereum, which is all these wallets are essentially open bank accounts, right? I don't see that happening. All transactions, financial history, people thinking it's anonymous, they're naive. So I don't see that happening either. So now we get back to the question, for whom, right? So I guess more solutions gonna come up where that's gonna suit everyone, right? And DeFi has this general term of where solutions are being built on Ethereum and different blockchains where that could surface communities, whether it's lending, borrowing, whatever solution that's being put out there. That promise is interesting. And now we're seeing this promise that blockchain solution of the whole promise of blockchain offered us. We're seeing that slowly come into fruition and being manifested, where suddenly that whole bubble thing is now like, hey, wait a minute, I see what's happening now, right? I see what's happening. There's billions and billions of dollars locked in these platforms, and actually on a day-to-day basis is wonderful to use. It still needs work, of course, but again, the innovation doesn't stop, right? It's even harder to keep up, right? The innovation doesn't stop, right? And that's where I'm like, listen, for whom? Retail investors will benefit definitely from this movement. We saw what happened, the whole GameStop saga and Robinhood. That was the best marketing ever for Ethereum and this industry. It was the best marketing we could have asked for in the last 6 months, right? What happened with Robinhood and GameStop and all these stocks with a heavy short leverage. So again, there's a big promise here. It's continuous. You participate in a hackathon which we had Etienne last week, 85 teams applied globally in a lockdown, virtual event, and so much ideas, so much ideas. It's the concentration of ideas in one place, one virtual event is amazing. I'd love to be part of that, right? I want to be where ideas concentrate, right? I want to be where people discuss ideas, right? I would get bored, right? We need more ideas, not less, right? So, and if Ethereum is that platform where people could start building and start manifesting those ideas, I'm all for it.
And speaking about ideas and innovations, so did I understand correctly that you expect DeFi space to bring way more innovative ideas than we see before?
I don't even think we've seen like
half
a
of
percent or half of it, not even 10% of it. I
Okay.
think when people say, well, we had DeFi summer or we're past that cycle, I'm like, nah, we haven't seen half of it. We haven't seen half of it. We
Okay.
haven't seen 10% of it. We're just at a mini start of it. We're just at a mini start of it. Once you start getting more and more boys and girls, 16, 17, started learning Go, Rust, Solidity, they start playing around with the technology when it becomes normal, right? It's part of their normal, right? It's even going to accelerate that innovation. And we haven't seen half of it. And even when, for instance, these portals and gateways between the fiat world and like crypto world, they start mingling and mixing up, that's even when it's even more going to accelerate. So I'm strapped on. This rocket is about to go into a different dimension. So everyone that's like, hey, we've seen DeFi and they're just waiting for the next narrative. I think they should look deeper into what this actually is as a philosophy, as a global innovation movement, so you will.
That's a very good answer to all those people who say that DeFi is already overheated and we don't see any new innovations coming out of that, just copy paste of what's already reached some level of success.
But here's the thing, even if it's a copy paste, right? Was the idea of Facebook really new? No. Social networks? No, right? We had MySpace before that, and we were on forums before that, right? Different forums before that. So we had ICQ before that, right? So there's constantly innovation happening. So even how much ideas don't happen in a vacuum. That's the whole thing, right? So you can copy, right? The whole Apple computer didn't come out of a vacuum, right? Someone had to see a monitor, a screen, a keyboard, and be like, hey, if I improve this just with 1%, it's probably a better product. One example, find that documentary, the rise and fall of Nokia. And they supported that documentary where they talk about the moment when Steve Jobs said, remove the keyboard. It's ugly. People just want a screen. They want more screen, right? And Nokia executives were like, nah, we're not going to do that. People want that. And I remember vividly when friends were like, dude, don't you miss that keyboard? How are you going to type if that screen breaks? I'm like, what if they create better screens? Right? What if they create better screens and you don't even need that keyboard? I just want more space, right? So was that iPhone really 100% a new idea? They probably changed one thing, that keyboard, and now people are like, hey, this is actually a better experience. So it doesn't need to be 100% new idea, people, right? It doesn't need to be. It's just one slight change could change people's experience in such a way that they're like, hey, this is the new product everyone is gonna want, right? It doesn't need to be a completely new idea. And Apple has proven that, right? It's perfect in copy pasting. There's a lot of companies where I would say copy more, right? Copy more and change a few things. It's beautiful, right? It doesn't need to be. And ideas, we're trying to make this sound like innovation happens when some dude is alone on an island and suddenly you get a light bulb. Like, hey, I was like, no, 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 no. You already have a database of known objects, tools, software applications, hardware, and you're like, hey, why don't we just change that? One tiny bit could change ultimately the end user experience. And that's what you're aiming for, right? It's not, people, you talk to people and they're like, hey, I spotted something completely new. I'm like, you're an alien. Only aliens can do that, right? Because they're not used to what's happening here on Earth. But we as humans, we watch YouTube all day long, right? You see people how they dress in Japan, Mexico. You're being influenced, right? You're being influenced with how people in Japan experience computers. Remember the Tamagotchis, these little robot animals, right? So, and everyone was like, it's typical, but now it's global, right? So now people are just improving on these robots, right? And it's just little by little by little where science and innovation is going to improve little by little. And that's in the whole human history, right? So I say copy more. So more bubbles, more copy.
Yeah, no need to invent the wheel, actually. Indeed, you can use
It's almost impossible.
Yep.
It's almost impossible. You being influenced by the images you're getting every day on YouTube, movies, Twitter. Oh my goodness, Twitter. All these social media platforms are literally a window in a global human experience, right? You could observe people in Delhi, New Delhi all day long, be like, hey, this is interesting. I'll copy it and create it in Amsterdam or Barcelona, right? Was it really new? So you saw it somewhere and decided to like tweak it for that local experience and regulation, and suddenly you have a company it's like, oh, totally new. Like, no. Sometimes you pick up stuff unconsciously, right? So copy away, kids, more copies.
The world will change more and more kids of 15, 16 will join the space and build something in crypto and DeFi. Do you have kids yourself?
I have two young daughters. Yeah, I have two young daughters. And the funny thing, I did educational science in college eventually because I was super interested in the human experience, human development, education in general. And I watched my 2-year-old, the youngest, and how her experience with my wife's iPhone, because I'm not an iPhone guy, her experience with the iPhone, YouTube, the intuitive idea of swiping. That's genius, by the way. That swiping is genius, right? But it's not an Apple invention. I would recommend anyone watch the documentary The Rise and Fall of Nokia.
I will find it and put the link.
I think it's on YouTube. I think it's on YouTube or on Netflix. The idea of swiping a 2-year-old is already intuitive, right? I remember I remember being at a bus stop once, and you have these lights, these light boards at the bus stop, and I saw this kid try to swipe that thing, and I was like, no, it's not a key, it's not a display. The kid already was like almost indoctrinated with the idea anything with lights and media can be swiped, right? So that's already interesting because now that's his normal, right? Media, how they interact with media becomes normal. So now what happens if they're going to give that as part of their educational curriculum, right? Programming, media, how to interact with media, consume it. I'd rather they be producers instead of just consuming media, right? So, I mean, this whole idea of kids being more exposed to the possibilities of programming languages and whatnot. It's a new paradigm even in education, right? I think in Sweden, they don't even teach kids how to write anymore. It's just straight to the keyboard. Straight to the keyboard. If it's a good thing, I don't know, right? But I think that's even not the good question. I don't even write that much anymore. Do you? I'm on Telegram typing away.
I'm writing down every day.
So 90%, that's folks from our generation.
Yeah.
Right? Probably, right? So go back, maybe 5 centuries ago, writing was not the thing. You should be a painter. You're an artist. And that was viewed as, oh, wow, what a enlightened soul. You're a painter. Amazing, right? So now you're like, okay, everyone needs to write. So now it's like, okay, how about we try to keep up with the pace of capitalism? You need to type in like 500 words a minute. Right? So that's the requirement, not writing. Because now someone try to transcript this interview. How you're going to write that? That's going to take you a couple of hours, right? But maybe there's even software that could translate this conversation, right? Put it in words. So, such a simple aspect of writing is going to change, and I think also what's required as part of being curriculum that's my daughters are going to get in school is going to be different. The oldest is 6, and I'm already teaching her typing on the keyboard. What's the escape key? If you're in trouble, press the escape key, right? If you're like, what's happening? Escape, 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 right? And she's already getting that education, right? So I think Solidity is going to be part of course. Python is going to be part of a school curriculum.
Well, I thought Vitalik was telling this years ago that it will be Solidity will be taught at schools, but I don't see that any school teaches it right now. Moreover, for example, my son is 16-year-old, and I started, I started explaining him the blockchain and crypto when he was 12. And I even hired professors to teach him in Skype how to code, etc. He was simply bored. But literally a few weeks ago, when he already heard from his friends about DeFi space booming, etc., he came to me asking questions. I explained to him nearly the same way, I guess, about tokenomics, how I understand it. I'm not the expert as well. And he tells me, Mother, why didn't you tell me these things with these words before? I could be a millionaire.
It's already a capitalist. Beautiful.
Unfortunately, yeah. So my question is, how do you explain to your 6-year-old daughter what is DeFi so that she gets passionate, but not in a hypey, scummy way?
Okay. The thing in education, especially the Montessori philosophy of education, you're trying to follow and try to keep track, in a sense, and guide the natural interest of a child. Okay? You try to, it's not imposed. Education should be intrinsic, right? The eagerness and the will to learn. So you kind of like put the offers, what's available to the child, and the child is going to intrinsically go towards where that natural instinct and curiosity is going to take them, right? So you offer it, and the child is going to naturally go in that direction. So you want to have those options available, whether it's music class, coding, sports, writing poetry. You're offering that, and at a certain point, the natural interest of the child is going to get in that direction. So DeFi at this stage, at her age, computers and anything that's possible on the computer is just one of them. Right? At her age, my oldest daughter is 6, right? Computers is just one part of it, right? She wants to watch television, sports, dancing, singing, painting, There's a wide variety of everything's like, hey, Dad, should we do this today? I'm like, let's do this, right? Let's go skiing, let's go fishing. It's like, okay, this is the planet. And the first thing I want her to have at this age is like, go hard on your curiosity, right? Like you're interested in it, like exhausted. And you're like, okay, I've seen it all. You move on to the next, right? And like, it should be that, right? Chase your curiosity, right? Like Einstein would say it, everything is curiosity, everything, right? That eagerness, like, okay, so now what is DeFi? So now what is Python, right? And if she doesn't have it, she's going to have a basic understanding because obviously it's going to be part of the household, right? But I think once she's like 16 or 20, I think the whole concept of crypto or digital assets is going to be normal, part of her life, as we're creating all these Web3 type applications, and it's going to be normal to her, right? And right now we're laying that groundwork, fundamental groundwork that's going to be normal to her, just like those people that laid the groundwork where email is normal to us, right? Email is normal to us. All these applications are normal to us, right? And the first mobile phones were just call, hang up, call and hang up, and or the best thing you could get is an SMS, right? Best communication, SMS. Now we got full-blown games on your mobile phone, right? So it's that innovation, and at a certain point, there's normalcy, and now we are waiting for the next wave of injection, like a massive innovation, and we can call that a bubble again, right? It needs to happen.
Speaking about kids, does your daughter have any kind of digital assets like digital arts, cards, whatever?
Not yet. I haven't exposed her to that yet, and everything is still kind of tangible, dolls, toys, and whatever. But I can see that definitely being something that's going to be, again, normal, right? She's trading it. When I was a kid, I used to trade NBA cards, right? So I expect the same thing to happen, right? With concert cards. I went to this concert, it's my proof, right? It's definitely going to be normal. And I think and NFT is definitely this authenticity proof. It was a movement that was normal to like gamers, people that like had gaming as part of their upbringing. It's normal, like, hey, you guys are discovering this now, right? We were already selling swords for thousands of dollars or something, right? And now we're picking up on it because blockchain provides that underlying infrastructure to have a global trade possible for that. And again, that's a promise, and that's a great innovation to have, to create this open marketplace for people to trade these assets. So again, bubble, there's actually stuff happening.
And did you invest in any NFT projects?
Yeah, actually, two of them. There's one called Terra Virtua. I did a small angel investment, and another one that's about to hit the market is called Chain Guardians. And a similar gaming / NFTs. And that proposition is similar, great technology, working product. So it's just a matter of them launching with a proper go-to-market strategy and on board hordes of users.
Cool.
So Chain Guardians, look out for that one.
Send me the links and
I
we'll
will
put them in the description.
I will definitely. I think that's the next major player in that scene to hit the market soon.
Okay, guys, I'm not giving investment advice and I'm not affiliated, but Etienne is definitely very smart. So if he said, look at it, maybe you should look at it in the description.
Let's be lucky. Let's be lucky, right? So let's see what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also have seen that in the website of TRG Capital, it is written that you invest mostly in the super disruptive technologies in the finance field, in DeFi space, and layer 2 applications. Layer 2 is Ethereum's new thing, yes, and how do you think, what will actually win the game, the Ethereum's layer 2 or the new side chains like Polkadot and others?
The thing is different things here. First, there's no winning. Because it's not a game where a game has a start and an ending, right? There's always, as long as innovation happening, change is that saying change is a law of nature, right? And that hints to that innovation part. So go back 40 years ago, Kodak owned the photography industry. They owned it. A couple of years later, Nokia had 98% of the mobile phone markets, right? They were winning in that period of time, right? So you're winning until the next piece of innovation. It's like, hey, we're gonna leave this boat and get on that boat, right? So as long as that's happening, I think you could be a hit today, but someone's gonna eat your lunch probably tomorrow, which is healthy, right? It happens. So go back to what you just said. Is Polkadot, these infrastructure protocols that offer a wide range of additional functionalities, right? Like dApps being built, projects being built, Polkadot even having that core functionality of anyone could connect their own blockchain, right? As a parachain to that relayer. Beautiful, right? That's beautiful. But as we're seeing with Ethereum, for Ethereum to onboard like transactions and users on a global level, and that's what they mean by the scalability problem. The way it's designed right now, its core design cannot offer that functionality, speed. The gas fees are what per transaction, $50, $20, and it varies every day. So that is not a good proposition to like capture value on a global level. So again, you meet your limit, someone is gonna innovate from that point, right? So in a sense, Ethereum, to be honest, met its limit as we know it today. But they're not quiet about it. There's innovation even happening with the promise of Ethereum 2.0, right? They are building also, right? But at the same time, other people are also building like Solana, Polkadot, Avalanche, Silica. There's a bunch of them, and Cosmos, Cardano. There's a bunch of these layer ones building and trying to prove that their solution is better, which is beautiful, right? So now this whole layer two, this whole investment thesis, we're like, we want to invest in this new industry, in these platforms that are like building these foundational blocks for this industry to advance, right? We feel the technology is still new. Like I said a couple of times, is that we're literally inventing the wheel as we go along, right? The track as we go along. We're on this high-speed train, and we're happy to be part of that funding of that innovation, right? So, and who knows, right? Who knows who's gonna win the game and be a dominant market player, right? And as we've seen in history, you could be ahead, have 90% of a market, 95% of a market, and literally in 20 years, someone else comes along and like, hey, goodbye, Apple. We control the mobile phone market now. So who knows, right? And it's been all through human history, right? Which is a good thing.
I love Asian movies, dramas, and I see
Yeah.
all the new ones. I see the new phones, which you can close like this.
Yeah.
So probably we will see them in the European market in a few months, or maybe years.
Yeah. I saw this, and that's a good thing about these science fiction movies, right? I saw also one where communication happens in your eye, right? You're like beep, and like, hey, Nelly wants to talk to you, and it happens in your eye, kind of like, so who knows, that could be a thing. Get a chip implanted or some shit. Who knows, right? And
yeah. I remember this also when you have the computer dashboard, but just in front of you without any computer, without any monitor, like transparent wall, and you can swipe and how do you call it? Yeah, swipe, etc. I was looking for technologies like that. I've seen this startup who is doing it from Switzerland 5 years ago, but I still don't see mass adoption of this on the market. Don't know why. Because it looks so cool in the movies when the FBI agent or someone else is just swiping different data sets.
Now, but who knows, 10 years, right? Functionality, user experience is going to be at such a level that everyone is going to be like, hey, this is the new cool thing. I need to have that. All right. What happened to the Google Glass? Remember that? Everyone was like, yeah, it's going to happen. Like, what happened? So maybe that was ahead of its time, right? I saw this YouTube video also where someone had invented YouTube 3 years, a streaming video service 3 years before YouTube. And they made one tiny mistake. They underestimated that most homes, and mobile phones couldn't handle high-speed data loads. So people didn't have a DSL at home yet. And the mobile phones couldn't handle that amount of data, but they had everything in place and they missed that tiny piece of data. So sometimes you could be unlucky and ahead of your time. That's also the risk we take, right, as investors.
Absolutely. 5 years ago, my family in the north of Russia, they still could not use YouTube because they did not have
high-speed internet. Wow.
Internet. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. That's definitely amazing. Amazing to hear that the penetration of high-speed internet is not everywhere. It's not the same everywhere. So that's interesting. All right. Awesome.
I want to come back to the decision-making part because you really sincerely amaze me, you and our common friend also, because before talking with you, I was thinking that blockchain or crypto investors, there are some people who are really short-time players who enter in order to exit very fast with a lot of X numbers. In your case, I see that you prefer going to long-term investments. Of course, you trade. Of course, you do this trading. And when you go in the long term, usually the earlier you jump in, the better. Did you ever invest in the white paper as it happened in 17, 16, etc.?
Oh, for sure. And I'll tell you why. There's a big component of investing you don't know. And it's actually it's a cool thing to say, right? You're human and you don't fucking know, right? You see a great white paper, it could be the best academic research by a couple of professors, academics got together and they're like, hey, we're going to raise money for this idea, right? And we're going to take this to market. I'm like, what exactly? Right? The idea, it's the white paper, right? So definitely, so you're kind of investing in a promise. So now that doesn't work out and you're like, okay, I'm going to update my thesis and be like, I want to have at least something tangible, some beta, some alpha product or whatever, right? But going back to the core of your question is, why should one want to go long, right? And is there like money to be made in a short-term investment horizon? The answer is yes, 100%. The market is still driven by speculation. Let's be honest here. And people could have that as a strategy. It's not a value judgment. But our thesis is that let the team do the work. You might sell a product now at $1, but if the team delivers on roadmap, the market discovers its value for the industry. That 5x you're taking today could be 50x in 2 years. So now it becomes a matter of investment horizon. When do you plan to enter? When do you plan to exit? Investment horizon, timeline, patience, the team's execution expertise or a willingness to execute their on strategy and roadmap. There's different factors at play where you're like, you know what, we've been holding this for 2 years. We've been with this team for 2 years. The industry could change totally. Regulatory perspective could change and be like, hey, maybe it's time to exit, right? So, but going along as a value investor, like Warren Buffett would say, right? It's going along. If you know what you invested in, the value, the market is going to discover the value because they're going to discover the solution that a particular startup was trying to put to market, right? So I feel like if I don't see that moment, Kava at $50, why would I sell it, right? So that's my take on it.
And see when it will become
Patience.
500.
Patience, yeah, right. A good friend of mine sold his Chainlink at 50 cents. It's $27 today, right? There's stories where people sold their Bitcoin for $50 and never looked back. But again, they made money, they made profits, right? So that's the whole thing. What's your investment horizon? You might need money and you're like, hey, I need to sell this asset. You're not gonna hold an asset if your family is starving, for instance. So there's different factors having influence in how you invest and why you decide to enter or exit. But again, if you're a structured like a VC type of fund, you might have those reserves where you're never in that position. Like, okay, we might panic sell a position because for whatever reason. So yeah, that's my take on that. So we prefer to go long, definitely.
Okay, and you are still considering early stage startups in DeFi space. So you are ready to look on the MVP stage.
Yeah. What we've added also to our thesis is that sometimes you miss a particular investment at its early stage, and you might take a position later as they got market validation, right? They're already trading. They've grown to a market cap of 100 million or whatever, half a billion. And you'd be like, hey, whoa, we've rediscovered it. Do your due diligence. Be like, hey, I think I'm going to start accumulating a particular asset, right? That happens all the time. You're not going to see, you're not going to get every pitch deck presented to you at its early stages. Sometimes you're going to discover a particular project once it hits the market. So that happens.
Good, yeah. Okay, yeah. The last question for today, because Etienne, I remember you need to run and you already dedicated more time than you promised. So thanks a lot for that. The last question is those startup founders who will be watching this interview and then thinking, oh my God, I want this investor on my board. I want to pitch to him. What should they keep in mind to get prepared better and to impress you? What do you
want? Lately, I've been getting more and more interested in founders should actually have ambition, man. And it's a good thing to express it, put it out there. I have an ambition. I want to do this, and I want to go for it. I want to do this. I'm driven, and that because the thing, you're on this journey in a gigantic field of unknowns. The future is unknown, and you must be like partly insane to be like, I'm going to stick to this journey, right? I'm going to stick to this journey. I'm going to keep going. And there's going to be an inflection point where like, boom, we might hit it. Same like happened with Ava. there's this project right now, Covalent. You talk to the founder and there's so much energy, like, hey, dude, let's go with this. I wanna hit it hard. So ambition is key. Be willing to adjust strategy. Like if you don't know, like, hey, we might pivot. It's not the end of the world. And one thing I like to see in founders, their pitches, if they truly understand the user they're building that solution for. That's a biggie, right? Like find validation, like Steve Blank would say, test the product with users, not your team, right? Or your family, but get a stranger to play with it, right? Get validation early, quickly. Let people play around with it, break it, and see what happens, right? You're trying to get validation and user feedback ASAP instead of being in this bubble of this thing is great and no one wants to use it, right? You don't want to. That's a classic one, actually, and it still happens where people build stuff in a vacuum. Don't do that. Okay.
Amazing. So be ambitious and validate your product.
Yeah, product. Validate early, man. Test it, play with it. Yeah, have people play with it. Have strangers play with it.
And if you want to pitch to Etienne personally as soon as possible, just join the description of the VC Shark Tank, which will happen in 11th of March on Innmind.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. That'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Honored to join that.
And you will be one of the VC sharks. I see you look at your clock, so thank you very much. You need to run, but thanks a lot. And
no worries.
Yeah, it was amazing, really.
No worries, Nelly. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. And if there's anything, just reach out.